You weren't born ashamed, but you learned to become invisible. It started slow. A flinch when you were too loud, a cold stare when you showed too much emotion, a laugh at your expense that made you second-guess your very nature. Over time, that quiet inner conviction took root. I must be the problem. And once that belief crystallized, you stopped being you. You started performing. This wasn't your fault. It was survival, and the world applauded it. Be nice, be useful, be quiet, be less. What they really meant was be acceptable. And if you had to mutilate your soul to do it, so be it. Because shame doesn't just hurt. It engineers, it builds identities, it scripts roles, it turns human beings into echoes. Nietzsche saw this centuries ago. He called it slave morality, a system built not from strength, but from resentment. Morality, he argued, wasn't about justice or goodness. It was about power. More precisely, about denying your power, about castrating the wild, pulsing instincts that made you alive, and replacing them with guilt, with duty, with fear of yourself. Fast forward to John Bradshaw, who gave Nietzsche's prophecy clinical form, toxic shame. The sense that it's not just what you do that's wrong, but that you, fundamentally, are wrong. That your very being is a problem to be corrected. Bradshaw shows how children internalize this shame and, without knowing it, build an armor, the false self. A character who smiles when hurting, performs when exhausted, and adapts so well to approval that they forget the performance was ever a mask. But there's a cost. You don't get to live as you. You live as your defense mechanism. Your presence becomes a calculation. Your words are measured, your laughter curated, your truth suppressed. And this is the tragedy. You look functional. You may even be admired, but inside you're vanishing, slowly, tragically, invisibly. This is not self-help fluff. It's existential surgery. Because if shame has rewritten your identity, then your freedom depends on unlearning the scripts you never consented to. And to do that, you must descend into the ruins, into the echoes, into the places where your real self was buried beneath someone else's approval. Nietzsche didn't want you to be good. He wanted you to be whole, not sanitized, not accepted, not obedient, but terrifyingly alive, with light and shadow, beauty and mistake, desire and doubt. His free spirit wasn't a self-help trope. It was a revolutionary act, a being who killed the gods of shame within and authored a new existence not from fear, but from fire. And that's what we're doing here. This isn't about coping, it's about reclaiming. This isn't about forgiveness, it's about resurrection. In the next part, we'll go deeper into the prison of the false self and begin the process of breaking it apart. If this resonated, stay with me. You're not lost. You were just rewritten, ready to meet the version of you that never needed to be fixed. If you've ever smiled while silently breaking, nodded while disagreeing, or apologized just for existing, then you've already met the false self. It's the version of you designed not to live, but to survive. And it's brilliant. It learns early how to shrink, how to please, how to disappear just enough to avoid rejection. And eventually it wears your voice, your name, your face. But make no mistake, it is not you. It is a survival construct, a performance layered over pain. And though it may have protected you, it now suffocates you, because staying acceptable comes at the price of authenticity. And being loved for your mask is just another form of loneliness. Before we go further, take a moment. Like and subscribe to PsychoPulse if this message cuts deeper than any motivational quote ever did. What we're doing here isn't inspiration, it's disruption. We're not decorating the cage, we're breaking it open. John Bradshaw called this process soul murder, when a child, punished for crying, ridiculed for needing, ignored for existing, concludes, "I am the problem. Not they hurt me, but I deserved it." And from that moment, the true self begins to retreat, into silence, into shame, into the dark. What's left is the persona, the adaptive layer that learns to avoid conflict, anticipate rejection, and never show too much. This isn't just psychological, it's physical. Your breath gets shallow, your shoulders tighten, your words come out cautious. Every expression is filtered through the question, will they still accept me if I say this? Nietzsche never used the term false self, but he described it when he spoke of decadent morality, a society that denies life, sterilizes instinct, and preaches guilt as virtue. He warned that when your vitality is shamed, your power is buried, and in its place, you inherit a morality designed to keep you compliant, tame, predictable. This is the secret shame doesn't want you to know. It's not yours. It was passed down through religion, family, institutions, even language. You didn't choose it. You just absorbed it, and you called it me. The false self lives in this lie. It thrives in obedience. It survives through perfectionism, people-pleasing, and hyper-rational control. But what it can't do is feel alive. It can manage, it can endure, but it cannot create, risk, love, or express. And here's the paradox. The world rewards the false self. It pays you for it, applauds you for it, promotes you for it, but all the while you're eroding, not loudly, silently, invisibly. You become a ghost that functions. Bradshaw offers the emotional roadmap out. It begins by recognizing that the shame that shaped you isn't truth, it's trauma, and that the voice in your head that whispers you're too much, you don't deserve, isn't wisdom, it's programming. Nietzsche offers the existential sledgehammer. You were not made to be good, you were made to be free. His answer isn't comfort, it's confrontation. Tear down the false values, destroy the internal altars built on fear. Create your own law, not as rebellion, but as authorship. That's what we'll do next. Not just identify the false self, but expose the values that gave it power. Because shame doesn't vanish with self-love quotes. It dissolves when you expose its architects. And when you do, something extraordinary happens. You stop surviving. You start existing. In the next part, we confront the gods of guilt and begin rewriting the code they left in your mind. Stay with me, because your real life hasn't even begun yet. You don't feel ashamed by accident. That voice in your head that says you're too much, you're not enough, or you should be better by now, that voice has a lineage. It's not you. It's inherited, planted by voices dressed as love, authority, morality, survival. And over the years you made a silent pact with them. If I shrink, will you love me? That's how shame works. It doesn't scream, it seduces. It convinces you that denial is virtue, that silence is strength, that suffering without complaint is noble. These are not truths. These are programs. Internal gods you never chose but bowed to anyway. Nietzsche calls them idols, and his call isn't subtle. Murder them. His philosophy of the revaluation of all values demands that we expose the moral foundations we've accepted without question. Traditions that glorify obedience, guilt, sacrifice, not out of wisdom but out of fear of life, of strength, of desire. He didn't ask you to rebel like a teenager. He asked you to create like a god. And to do that, you must first clear the altar. These internal gods, the perfectionism, the judgment, the chronic guilt, they aren't just bad habits. They're emotional relics of a morality that despised the body, distrusted pleasure, and feared chaos. Bradshaw echoes this in psychological terms. These gods are the voices of wounded parents, broken systems, absent nurturers. You internalize them because, as a child, your survival depended on pleasing them. But as an adult, continuing to obey them is not safety, it's self-erasure. Shame became your compass, but it always points you away from yourself. And this is the cruel brilliance of toxic shame. It makes you the warden of your own prison. You censor your voice before others get the chance. You dim your light before it becomes a target. You self-sabotage and call it humility. You abandon yourself and convince yourself that it's maturity. But Nietzsche knew this isn't humility, it's decay. The internal gods, these false altars, must fall. And when they do, you're not left empty. You're left clear. Clear to create your own law. Clear to ask, what do I consider beautiful? What do I choose to value? What kind of life demands my devotion? This is aesthetic freedom, not obedience, but authorship, not adaptation, but creation. Bradshaw's voice returns here, not as the hammer, but as the healer. He reminds us, once you clear the shame, you must rebuild the self, slowly, gently, with truth. That inner child, once shamed into silence, must now be invited back to feel, to express, to belong, not in the eyes of others, but in your own. This is what makes liberation sustainable. Destruction without reconstruction is just chaos. But when you pair Nietzsche's fire with Bradshaw's compassion, you don't just break chains, you build foundations. And yes, the world might resist this. People may recoil, you will lose roles, expectations, maybe even relationships, but you will gain presence. And presence is the beginning of real life. Because shame is not just an emotion, it is a life path you never agreed to. And the moment you begin to question it, not from rebellion, but from wisdom, you reclaim your authorship. In the final part, we will go deeper into what comes after the fall, the healing, the rewriting, the return to your original name. And remember, Like and subscribe to Psycho Pulse so this journey doesn't end here. The war against shame is ancient, but so is your right to be whole. Let's rebuild. You are not broken, you are interrupted. Interrupted by systems that taught you to fear your own soul. Interrupted by parents too wounded to see you. Interrupted by beliefs that made survival feel like betrayal of the self. And so, you split. Into the one who feels and the one who hides. Into the child who cried and the adult who copes. Into the self you were and the self you had to become. But here's the forbidden truth. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is permission. Permission to be without apology. That's what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the free spirit. Not someone fearless, but someone who no longer waits for the world's approval to exist. Someone who stops performing worthiness and begins embodying it. John Bradshaw called this moment the reintegration of the fragmented self, when the inner child, long buried under shame, is finally heard. Not judged, not fixed, heard. That's the moment you stop living through the armor and start living through the pulse, the presence, the permission. But don't romanticize this journey. Healing doesn't come in a soft whisper. It often roars. The false self doesn't vanish quietly, it clings, it tempts, it seduces you with the comfort of masks. Just one more performance, it says. Just one more version they'll accept. But you've already paid the cost. You've smiled through silence, adapted until you disappeared, carried guilt that was never yours. You don't need another performance. You need truth, and truth is messy. Truth cries in public, truth stumbles, truth forgets the script. But truth, unlike shame, lives, and living, as Nietzsche knew, is not tidy. It's contradiction, it's chaos, it's desire and despair, laughter and darkness. He didn't ask you to be clean, he asked you to be real, to let life pass through you like fire. Not filtered, not staged, raw. Bradshaw shows us the hands to hold. Nietzsche gives us the hammer to swing. Together, they lead us back to the place shame first took from us. The sacred right to be fully human, fully felt, fully flawed, and fully worthy. You are not here to be a version of yourself that others approve of. You are here to become the author of your own being. And that authorship, it starts with something radical, saying yes to everything you were taught to hate. The emotions, the instincts, the needs, the voice, even the pain, especially the pain, because healing isn't the removal of scars. It's the recognition that they are proof you survived. And survival, when it leads to truth, becomes liberation. Now, before you leave, take a moment. Like and subscribe to Psycho Pulse. Not because you need another video, but because you deserve a space where your depth isn't pathologized, where your contradictions aren't a problem to fix, but a symphony to understand. And if this message stirred something in you, write it in the comments. I free myself from shame. Not for the algorithm, for you. For the part of you that was waiting to be named. Because when you name the prison, you start designing the key. This is not the end. It is the invitation. The altar has crumbled. The idols are dead. Now it's time to write your law, live your name, and reclaim the one thing shame was never strong enough to destroy, your pulse, your psycho pulse.